What's a piece of information you wish you never found out? Story 1. My father once told me a story about a couple a friend of his rented his house out to. The father fell asleep in their bed next to their baby. The next morning, the father woke up to see that he had rolled over in his sleep and accidentally suffocated the baby. My father casually told me this when, by coincidence, we passed by his friend's house. Nothing else prompted this. I love my father, and he is a good man, but occasionally hell just casually tell you a disturbing story without any warning. Answer: very random question, but is your father an immigrant? Because my mom is, and she has the worst habit of telling me super depressing or morbid stories right in the middle of a fun conversation or a beautiful and otherwise joyful day. Sometimes she'll be like, "Hey, do you remember that babysitter? The young one who you loved so much? You remember her? The one who was really kind to you and always bought you special treats? She had that sweet little dog. You remember the dog, right? Well, I found out that she got taken down by her boyfriend last week. He went nuts and eliminated everyone on the house. The little dog, too. Isn't that crazy? And he'll just be sitting there looking at her like edited to add a line for clarity." Story 2. Recently found out that a child I helped raise, now 24, recently tried to eliminate an 8-year-old girl. He was in a restaurant and smashed a bottle over her head and then stabbed her in the throat. She's okay. He's awaiting trial. He's looking at 25 years minimum. Only found out because people started harassing me on his Facebook page. Story 3. Finding out that I'm a biological father of only one of my 2 kids. It's too late now since I love both of my kids equally and I am their father. Story 4. My grandma, mom's side, and my grandpa, dad's side, had an affair behind everybody's back. I unfortunately saw a message on my grandma's phone from my grandpa. It was a message going into insane detail about their latest meetup. No one knows I know, nor does anybody know what I know. Story 5. I found out that after a Christmas party, my ex drove a woman who had been drinking out of town and told her she had to give him head in order for him to take her home. Story 6. Your immune system wants to attack your eyeballs and make you blind, but can't for some reason. I forget why. Sometimes it can. People wake up blind. Answer: no. But your immune system is not usually exposed to the proteins in the eyes. When a penetrating eye injury happens, thereby exposing said proteins to the immune system, it then may or may not decide to register them as targets for attack, causing a condition called sympathetic ophthalmia, where injury to one eyeball can trigger this reaction in the both eyes. Story 7. Why my former best friend was expelled from university. Thought it was because he failed his midterms or something. He was just gone the week after that and no one heard anything. RA, person overseeing our dorm floor, heard of us discussing this and he soberly broke the truth to us because my friend group and I were nice to the RA staff. Turned out he was a date rapist and was taking advantage of tipsy girls at frat parties. Parents were rich alumni, so they paid the school and God knows who else to keep it quiet. TBH, when I first met him, he seemed more like that one try-hard kid from high school who was trying his best to fit in despite his social awkwardness type deal. He appeared harmless overall upon first impression, but once that news broke, we were all disgusted and felt horrible because of it. Like, darn. How the fudge did we not notice this shoot-type feeling? Story 8. Kinda dumb, but all my siblings, me included, were born in the same month. I never thought much of it until a coworker pointed out that we all must have all been conceived around May. My mom's birthday is in May. We were all birthday intimacy babies. Edit. I should probably point out that we're not quadruplets or anything. We were all born years apart. Story 9. That most people break up over the same thing that initially made them fall in love. For example, being silly or being direct, etc. Answer. This is so real. You fall in love with a sensitive artist, but years later you're mad they won't get a real job. You love someone for being so assertive together. Years later you're frustrated cause they're inflexible or even controlling. You love how driven ambitious someone is, but later you're mad that they answered work emails on your honeymoon, then that they always miss your kids' soccer games. You fall for a goofball, then you're mad they almost never take anything seriously. You love how easygoing your boyfriend is, then you're mad that your husband never shows any initiative in planning dates, vacations, etc. Story 10. Smell is particulate, i.e., when you smell shoe tits, because there are actually tiny particles of shoot in your nasal cavity. Story 11. That basically all fish are riddled with parasites. The parasites are either cooked or frozen to passing, but it's really turned me off of sushi. Which sucks, because I love sushi. Story 12. If I made $1 million an hour, which would be insane life-changing money for me and everyone I know, it would take about 400 years for me to have more money than Musk, Bezos, Zuckerberg, and Thiel, aka the billionaires who are screwing up my country right now. That's pretty demoralizing. Story 13. That my uncle is a pedophile who molested his own son, which prompted him, the son, to try to take his own life. Everyone pushed it under the rug, but we all know he's still a perverted piece of shoot. I was sadly left alone with him a lot, but he's never done anything worse than trying to kiss me. Story 14. My dad isn't biologically my dad. I had a solid idea that was the case, but this was confirmed via one of the Ancestry DNA kits. He apparently knew and raised me as his own. He wasn't a great dad, but I give him a lot of props for that. The guy wasn't great. There wasn't much fallout per se, but let's just say, I wish I hadn't confirmed what was in Pandora's box. He and my mother were a peas in a pod, so it's just more people I need to block everywhere now. Story 15. The fact that up until shockingly recently, no anesthesia was used on babies during surgery. Now you all know this too. Story 16. The Snowden disclosures. We're living in a system that will plant substance us out before we even have a chance to grow. That's quite a realization, and it's a horrible one. Story 17. Your belly button can connect to your urinary tract, again after you've grown, and you can piss out your belly button. Some women bleed out of their belly button cause the connective tubes open up again. All the machinery your belly button used to connect outside your body as a fetus is still there, and sometimes it just opens up again. Edit. My brain typed the truth it wanted instead of the truth it knew. Story 18. Someone I work with had a 3-year-old son. He was in the driveway. The guy's father-in-law had no idea and went to move his car. He ran over and eliminated the 3-year-old. Story 19. My mother-in-law told my wife, who then told me, that my father-in-law can't get it up anymore. He's on so much medication like blood thinners and stuff for heart failure that if he took Viagra, it would eliminate him. Story 20. I wish I never read about or saw the horrible photos of the Black Dahlia takedown. I read about takedown all the time, and it doesn't affect me, but that one affects me so much for some reason. I still get flashbacks of the photos and the story. I was in a vulnerable situation when I viewed them, so maybe that's why it affected me so deeply. Story 21. My favorite man was getting divorced. He turned out to be the most abusive man I date. Now I know why she left him. Story 22. All Fruit Loops are the same flavor, just dyed different colors. This ruined a big part of my life. I'll never be the same and can never fully trust colors now. Story 23. How the heck you can integrate all existing academic disciplines to understand that one thing that I just can't find what is. Story 24. I grew up with a single mom, my 3 siblings. My older brother, I the only 2 with the same parents. Him, I were sent to our dads on weekends when my mom had to work. My dad wasn't an attentive dad by any means. He never reached out to or for us, so when we were on his weekends, we weren't able to eat with the new wife 2 boys they had together. It seemed we were always a last-minute decision, so maybe they didn't plan for us. That's always the story I tell myself. We also had to sleep in the same bunk bed with my brother making me get in back by the wall. I have no troubling memories of my dad. However, I can remember my mom telling me to stay beside my brother, telling him to keep an eye on me. When him and the new wife divorced, we were older, but still not old enough to stay home, so off to the, yet again, new family, also new kids. Same rules applied with food sleep. Once old enough to not have to go, but seeing my dad rarely, my mom told me the reason for their divorce was BC he sad me. She said matter-of-factly that he came from a terrible family where that sort of thing was the norm, so she got out of it. I asked if she knew that. Why were we made to go? She had to work, he PD. 20 a week support, that was her answer. Fast forward many YRs, but no relationship at all with him. Seeing him one weeks a year, if that was it, but he visited my older sisters several times a year. He'd drive through my town, go to hers, but be upset that I wouldn't go to hers, 6 hours south. My brother had 0 contact with him. After having cut him off entirely BC, it was mentally exhausting, but also BC. I started thinking about what he did to me, then being around my nieces. It worried me. I wondered why my mom wasn't any more protective than when I was 7 years old. I rationalized my decision based on the knowledge of knowing what he did, but also BC, he simply didn't care anyway. I was okay with that decision. In 2017, he passed away with neither myself or my brother being notified. That info went to my sister, who was not his, but who he preferred. We neither one went to his funeral or memorial. That's closed. Not long after, while having a family thing, someone brought him up, asking if I regretted not having a relationship with him. I didn't, then went on to say how I believed knowing that from my early teens, it sorta took the shape of my not having anything to do with him. My mom immediately says, "What?" she yells. "Who TB did you hear such a lie from?" I, now confused, said, "You told me. You told me when I just turned 13, but you still made me go to his home knowing so." My mom said she told me that BC she wanted me to shut up about him, with all my nagging questions of their marriage divorce, and why she was a single mom when all my friends had a mom-dad. To this day, at 60 years, I don't know the truth. My sister doesn't believe it. My brother won't even discuss it, but my mom is now in late-stage dementia, not remembering anyone or anything. I cut him off based on her story to find out she made it up. Even the audacity to sort of laugh with I can't believe you believe that. I'm struggling forgiving my mom with not only that, but so much more. But I also know I need to do it for myself so I can drop this anchor. Story 25. I found lewd Polaroid pictures of my mom with a man she was having an affair with when I was 8, and my parents were going through it. Now we know why. I asked her about them. It ruined our relationship forever, like I was to blame for them. Story 26. A childhood friend of mine told me once she walked in on her parents and my parents all in bed together, and that my parents were at her house a lot when we were kids. I spent most weekends with my grandmother, and that was probably why. Story 27. Finding out my father told his pastor he didn't know if he could love me anymore after I came out. Maybe I would have been less inclined to cut him out of my life after he went full-blown MAGA. Story 28. Due to my sister making fun of me for only being with one person, our parents wanted to give us perspective, so now I know both their body counts. I wish I could forget it. Story 29. Rosebudding. Intimacy alternative tastes around anal prolapse. I wish I could erase this concept from my mind. Story 30. My ex and the girl who bullied me for years started dating, and it was awful. Two people who have given me so many issues in their own ways, now together as a couple? Hell no. They didn't last long, as expected, and there was no reason for my ex to come and tell me about this. His POV was he wanted me to know before I got to know through someone else. Nobody would have told me because everybody kind of knew this wouldn't last long, lol. This information was nothing but a waste of space in my brain. Story 31. My in-laws used to be swingers back in the day. I found their AFF account when cleaning up their computer. Spouse confirmed when she admitted to finding photos of their parties when she was a teenager in the 80s. Story 32. That time flows backwards, and that we are perceptively stationary as it flows past us. Our perception of time going forward is because the future is flowing towards us until we experience it as the present before it continues flowing behind us. Story 33. Watching Frank be cremated on Shameless. It was silly, OFC, but my sister had been cremated not long before, and I really didn't ever want to see the process, you know? Skeeved me out. Of course I knew what happens, but seeing the machine and all that, IDK, really wish I stayed ignorant to the whole process, LOL. Story 34. That it's impossible to use only sustainable energy sources to provide enough energy for all countries. Story 35. Trump likely violation many kids, which is the compromat Putin has, holding his actions hostage and destroying the United States, and thereby the world's environment, and therefore the world. So child raping is physically going to end the world. Answer. My pet theory on Trump and other Epstein thralls is that Epstein and who he was working for arranged for targets, such as Trump, to be participants in making snuff movies, maybe with underage or not. It would explain just how seriously Epstein's marks took his blackmail. There is no statute of limitations for homicide, and with special circumstances, it can carry the passing penalty. Statutory violation is serious, but not electric chair serious. Story 36. Ted Bundy was baptized in the same church I currently attend. Yes, the LDS Church. Obviously, they took it back once his crimes came to light. Story 37. My friend was telling me about getting robbed on vacation. Him and his wife had went out for the day, and while they were gone, someone broke in their room and took everything of value except the camera. After they got home, they developed the film from the camera. There was a picture of the thief sticking their toothbrush up his butt. They had continued to use the toothbrushes. Story 38. That my mom was acquainted with my future boss and texted her to put in a good word after I interviewed for the job. They were desperate for people though, so hopefully it wasn't 100 a favor. Story 39. Not too bad, but I found that my ex posted private messages on a few apps from when I was having a BPD episode saying I was abusive, lying about mental disorders. Definitely could have lived my life better without finding out about that, LOL. Story 40. The transcript that floats around online of the Toy Box Killer isn't actually clickbait. It was played for female captives. I'd seen it, but largely disregarded it as twisted fiction. Finding out it was real and the circumstances around it messed me up and paved the way to a greater understanding of what humans are capable of doing to each other. Story 41. I saw some intimate pictures of my fiancée with her ex, and it was there in her old drive, which she forgot to wipe out. Story 42. There is a troubling part of my medical records which details how horrible a time I had of adjusting socially as an autistic fifth grader. All my parents did after that was switch my school. It seems obvious I should have been seeing a counselor. Maybe you'd have to read it, but it's pretty bad. Story 43. How the majority of people have lost faith in humanity, yet the people are humanity. The same people complaining are often the problem, but they don't want to admit it. Story 44. TLDR trigger warning, pet consumption. I work volunteer with an activist organization that try to end animal abuse, but we more focus on ending abuse to cats and dogs. I've seen a lot of cases, but the ones that always disturb me the most are butchered cats and dogs for consumption, which I had no idea people did before joining the organization. Consumption and selling is illegal where I am. Graphic pictures, descriptions, sometimes even videos, all ingrained in my head. Worst picture I've seen was when it was fresh. At first, you'd think that it seems absurd and not really a usual thing that appears, but I had a month where I had to endure about 5 reports. Till this day, I do get reports. Not as often, but still sometimes to still be worried. Story 45. That some people microwave fish at work and think it's totally fine. Society is hanging by a thread. Story 46. In Dying Light 1, the volatiles don't care about your flashlight. The game used to be so much more fun when I thought I had to manage visibility as well. Story 47. There's groups and actually a designated person to cover tragic events in my hometown. I literally do not. I'm currently studying these riots, No King protests, and anti-ICE, and have submitted something to be looked into further regarding many of the crowds being filled with independent journalists that want to recite something jerk backwards and blah blah blah. Money, indeed, said this was a livable salary and didn't mention anything about 15 years of work. Story 48. When I started working in a hospital years ago, I learned how to look up information about old patients and found digitalized files from centuries ago of my grandma, and that she had her tubes tied here. Also, my mom telling me the same day that she also had her tubes tied after me and my sister were born. IDK if I was acting childish, but it just was something I didn't want to know because I grew up religious, and not even as much as my grandmom or mom did, and honestly thought or hoped they weren't doing anything unholy. Also, still wouldn't mind forgetting this, but it's my own fault. Story 49. Scientists say the universe is natural, but they didn't took into account that things that happened before Big Bang could be unnatural. Cause. So basically, they reject every possibility just because they lack of intelligence, and I would wish I never found out that this world is ruled and discovered by stupid people. Story 50. I had a repressed memory my mom recalled back for me of being hanged in middle school by other students. Threw a large jump rope over pipes in the bathroom and hauled me up.